podcast, I spoke with the meditation instructor, Pema Wangchen. He's a very close friend of mine and the closest thing to an older brother that I've ever had. I hope that this conversation can be of benefit to you. Please enjoy whatever you listen to of it. Let's start off with our good friend Lori McLaughlin. You and I met at the Land of Medicine Buddha. It's a Buddhist retreat center. We are working there with Lori McLaughlin, and unfortunately, she has already passed away. But one thing that you and me have touched on multiple times is her practice of rejoicing. The first thing that I want to talk about is that the practice of gratitude seems to be quite popular on the internet and probably in real life. But can you talk about how rejoicing is what is rejoicing? What is the practice of rejoicing?
Yeah, well, I kind of like the definition of rejoicing. I think it makes it more accessible. Um, Sympathetic joy, to be able to cultivate our mind to really be happy with other people who are experiencing happiness. And I think we can include this in a range, even from the most mundane thing to really think about and ponder how many good and wonderful things are happening to people right now in this moment, and to really allow this awareness to open our mind and to be able to cultivate. And maybe in the beginning we won't really be able to, but through practice we can cultivate a sense of really sharing in that happiness. And we find in every moment we have infinite reasons to be happy. And this also, I think, leads us to a sense of greater connection with everyone. And it transforms our mind from being jealous or envious, which is a state of suffering, a state of unhappiness. When we recognize that in our mind, when we become aware of how we're feeling when we're in a state of jealousy or envy, to be able to transform that, we ourselves find a great sense of peace and happiness and joy.
Beautiful. And I can't help myself, but I think the one thing I want to touch on is that it requires mental focus and effort to practice rejoicing. Do you agree with that? Or
Yeah, it's like anything, we have to make the decision first, right? This is something I want to do. We have to understand its value
good
so
point.
we can make the decision. Maybe even if it's just, okay, I'm going to try it and see if it is beneficial. And then we really have to try it. We have to make that commitment, make the decision, and then remember to put it into practice, to be able to taste the fruit, the benefit of the practice.
So, just in case there's any confusion on the part of the listener right now, my
Yeah.
understanding of someone that would be practicing gratitude would be something like, I'm grateful for the beautiful weather today. What would an example of the practice of rejoicing look like for an individual that's exerting effort to practice rejoicing?
Yeah, I think both practices are incredibly beneficial. Yeah, gratitude practice is one thing, to be grateful for what we have,
Mhm.
and to notice that, because our mind is inherently uh, negative and so often focused on what we're missing. But yeah, so a good example of rejoicing on a very basic level is, I go for a walk around our neighborhood here,
Mhm.
and my partner Helga and I, we have a really lovely apartment,
Mhm.
and we have the idea that it would be so nice to also maybe someday have a home where we could host students, and we walk around the neighborhood. And for a while there, I became aware that I was looking at these homes, and like in so many areas, a regular home here is, 500,000 euros or 800,000 euros, and so far out of any realm. And I was feeling jealous
Mm-hmm.
How come these people get to have this home
Yes.
and we don't get to have this home? And I became aware of that, and that was a state of, yeah, unhappiness, right?
Mm.
And so then I trained the mind in being so happy for the people who get to have it and rejoicing in their happiness. So this turned my walk from a walk of feeling dissatisfaction and I don't have enough to being able to share in the very good fortune of those who have a home. And we can train our mind to a point where we can be as equally happy, if not even more happy, that something good and wonderful is happening for someone else
Mm.
as we are for ourselves. So we find a wealth of joy and the ability to really, really genuinely be happy for something good and wonderful happening to someone who we don't know. Just
Yeah.
like we would for ourselves, or just like we would for a family member or a good friend. Um, so it leads to happiness.
Awesome. I think I'm kind of reiterating what you're saying, but kind of recap. Oftentimes, gratitude seems more grateful for the good in our lives, and rejoicing often seems more great, or it's like the rejoicing or gratefulness for the good that's happening or occurring in other people's lives. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it exactly. Yeah. And both are important and both are valuable.
Agreed. And
Yeah.
it's we're like you were saying, we're not in that mindset of negativity the moment we're grateful or rejoicing. So we're not suffering in that moment of exerting
Yeah.
effort. Yeah,
Yeah. Exactly.
beautiful. Okay, let's move on to contentment. For
Okay.
me, where I'm at in my life, contentment still feels like an abstract concept that I wrestle with. Where are you at with contentment? What does it mean to you, Pema?
I think we have to remember it's all a practice, right? So it's a journey, and we're going to sometimes be able to practice it and feel the benefit of contentment. For me, contentment is yeah, it's often described as supreme wealth. Um,
Can you say more about that? What do you mean by supreme wealth?
well, it's this mindset, right? So yeah, you could have one individual who maybe they have $1 billion in the bank and a mansion and 20 cars and a private jet, and so obviously more than enough. But if they're not happy with what they have, if they're
Mm,
still caught in the mindset of I want more and I have to get more, and they're not even able to enjoy what they have, they're worried about losing what they have. They're in a state of unhappiness, despite the fact that they have $1 billion in the bank. And then you have someone else who maybe they have a modest home and they have enough money to eat and they have everything they need, and they're so grateful for
mm,
what they have. And they recognize that they have everything they need. And I would argue that the person, in a very modest home who has this inner attitude is much wealthier than the person with $1 billion, dollars in the bank. So it's this, for me, I often will try to, my kind of gateway into contentment is saying to myself and then really trying to feel it. Um, I have everything I need.
beautiful. I love it.
I have everything I need. And sometimes we just say it and we're not able to feel it, but through practice, we're able to, when we say that and we're able to really feel it, there's a sense of peace.
Yeah.
And it kind of breaks apart this poverty mindset, more, 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 more. And it doesn't mean that we don't live our lives and we don't pursue or you know
Goals.
goals and ambitions and work towards those things, but it's just the mindset of it, right?
Yeah. one thing that keeps coming to my mind, can't help myself again, is like it's similar, like almost like rejoicing is the antidote to jealousy. Contentment
Hmm.
is the antidote to kind of over-consuming desires within our heart that are kind of going overboard and getting extreme, so to speak. It's coming back and checking in and being grateful for where we're at and what we have. I don't know, I could be wrong, but that might be one interpretation.
No, I think, yeah, I think that's exactly it. You know, you mentioned, yeah, the word desire. This desire is unquenchable, right? It really is. If we're caught up in that desire mindset, will never be satisfied. If we have 100,000, we want 500,000. If we have 500,000, we want 1 million. If we have, it's just endless. It's unquenchable, and we live our whole lives like that, and then we die, and we can't take any of it with us, and maybe we never enjoyed what we had in our entire life. It was never good enough, and this is really, if we think about it, this is really kind of a tragedy, and so we're very fortunate to be able to have heard and to have encountered these teachings and to have an interest in putting them and applying them to our mind, where we're able to really enjoy and appreciate what we do have.
Awesome. And one other thing in relation to what you're saying is uh it seems like having so much money, having a nice car or many nice cars or a very large house is in some cultures perhaps uh at least to some people's minds, over glorified. So um, maybe we feel inadequate when we see that others have this, and then in some cultures, the individual who is very grateful, regardless of where they are on the financial spectrum, um, they are not as glorified in some cultures, and perhaps it's our jobs as individuals to try to paint a new narrative or picture in the those people that we talk with in our lives to try to glorify the individual who is content and grateful with where they're at and try to repaint the picture. I don't know.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I really think I think so. At the end of the day, yeah, the culture around us is going to be the culture around us, and we have a great influence on it. Um, but yeah, I think the more we just have to walk our path and live by our own, kind of truest sense of deeper values, and that will, I think, inevitably influence the culture around us. Yeah.
That's empowering. Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about with you, Pema, is the importance of or maintaining a positive attitude. For me, the roller coaster of my mind going into cynicism and negativity and judgment and comparing, competitiveness, pride and egoism, and uh, just the whole slew of negativity and inner kind of darker emotions. I'm assuming I'm not the only person in the world that has some of this stuff going on within them.
You're not.
Uh, uh, so, I mean, we've already talked about contentment and being grateful and rejoicing.
Yeah.
I kind of categorize this as part of having a positive attitude or a positive mindset. I mean, we could talk all day about this, but what are some
Hmm.
things that you feel inspired to share about maintaining or the importance of a positive attitude?
Yeah, I think you really nailed it. It's our minds, if we're paying attention, if we're noticing, if we're awake at all, we quickly realize how many negative thoughts and views are in our mind, right? And I think we have to, one, become aware of that, and sometimes, kind of we have to challenge that view. Is that true? Is what I'm thinking true? Um, and I think, yeah, everything that we did talk about is helping us to cultivate a more positive attitude. And this positive attitude is really more of hmm, I think the more and more we're able to kind of get in touch with this inner world and the vast resources which are available to us within our own heart, mind, being, whatever you want to call it, we realize that there isn't really any situation which is yeah, hopeless. Even if yeah, we're in an extremely difficult situation to not drown in the negativity. If we drown in the negativity, we have an enormously difficult time finding our way out of the situation, having the inner resources to find our way out of a difficult situation. But if we can keep at least that kind of the door to hopefulness, to that light of okay, this situation is manageable. I do have the resources. This is workable. If we can at least keep the door to that crack, that light, you know,
Yeah.
shining a little bit, then we have the possibility of making wiser choices, better choices, and we just have a happier life. And I think we have to be careful that we're not, this positive attitude, we're not going around pretending like everything's, rainbows and unicorns. We're not sticking our head in the sand. It's being awake, it's being aware, and understanding what's possible within any given moment. And I think the depth of our understanding grows if we're on, let's say, any kind of spiritual path where we're waking up and we're paying attention and we're looking more and more deeply inward. I
Well
don't know if that
said.
makes sense or not.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. And in addition to that, I think, when if we use having our heads like buried in the sand as an analogy, like just going back to suffering, it just doesn't feel good. You're just not happy when your
Hmm.
attitude's bad. Like whenever my head's in a bad space, lacking of hope, lacking of positive aspiration, um, when there's ill will, when there's no goodwill for myself or others, then I'm just suffering. So
Hmm.
it's like sometimes even from like a selfish point of view, it's like you got to ask yourself, do you want to suffer anymore?
Hmm.
Like if you don't want to suffer, then maybe you should try to change your mindset. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's, we have these habits and the habits seem so solid and it's so easy to feel stuck in a pattern. And we have to remind ourselves, and I think this is part of keeping the positive attitude, we have to remind ourselves that it's all workable, that we're not really stuck, and that we can work with our mind, even if we're, locked in prison. We don't have any other choice. So all we can do is work with our mind and try to make the best of any circumstance and suffer less. But it is a practice. We are gonna have our moments of falling down, even if we have all of the information.
Yeah.
Like me, I have all of the information, but I'm falling down on a regular basis and falling into that black hole on a regular basis,
Me too.
and it's a state of suffering, right? It's
Yeah.
just a misery, and then we have to get up and take the next step. And what else can we do?
Yeah. And sometimes people help me to get out. Like I'm
Oh
so
yeah,
like I get unconscious. My head's in the sand. I even though I try to meditate and try to pay attention to my thoughts and emotions, sometimes I'm just lost
yeah,
in the junk of my mind, and other
me
people
too.
will metaphorically slap me in the face and help me to check up and be like, okay, yeah, I'm going a little crazy here. I gotta
Mhm.
recalibrate and recenter and come back to hope and focusing on the good and either resting or problem solving, whatever is needed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're very fortunate to have a community of beings. Only we can walk the path ourselves, but we have a vast support network that we can tap into. And if we don't have that right now, or if we're not aware of that, we can take steps to kind of create that, So, yeah. Even if it's just in the form of a book,
Yeah,
something. We have
exactly.
resources. Yeah.
Or daily quotes on your in an app on your
Yeah.
phone. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love it. I love talking with you, Pema. You inspire me to try to move in a better direction, and I'm so grateful that we are staying in touch, and I'm very grateful that you were willing to step on and chat with me, and I'm inspired by our talk, and yeah, thank you once again.
Oh, it's my honor. I'm so grateful that you invited me, and yeah, we get to continue our journey together. You're one of my favorite people. I know we're not supposed to have
As
favorites, but you're
as
one
are
of my
you to
favorite
me.
people on the planet. So
As are you to me. Yeah.
thank you, Jesse
No,
La.
you're still the only person I consider as like something like a big brother to me, and you're consistently um an inspiration to me. And don't ever worry about letting me down or anything like that. I don't have any expectations of you, but I see that you're putting in time to practice, and you've got an awesome personality, and I'm not saying you're perfect, but you inspire me. So thank you for being an inspiration in my life. Thank you for listening to the Blue Cuboid podcast. Please have a nice day.